Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's webinar. The topic this time is A Lawyer's Toolbox, Tools for Getting the Job Done. This webinar is hosted by the ABA Legal Technology Resource Center, and speaking today will be Ron Collins from Amicus Attorney. The Legal Technology Resource Center is an ABA member benefit provided by the Law Practice Division of the ABA. The LTRC has been providing lawyers with legal technology guidance for more than 25 years. You can find a variety of legal technology articles, guides, videos, and other resources on our website at www.lawtechnology.org or at our blog, www.lawtechnologytoday.org. Ron Collins is an experienced attorney, a fellow of the College of Law Practice Management, and an internationally recognized author and speaker on the subject of law and technology. He is also the founder and CEO of Gavel & Gown Software, a company dedicated to providing practice management solutions that work the way lawyers do. Thank you all for joining us, and we'll now begin the webinar.
Thanks, Rose, and thank you all for attending. I'm happy to be here talking to you about a lawyer's toolbox. I want to start by thinking about it. As lawyers, we often tend to think that our tools are our minds, which is true, but all professionals need some other tools to work with and to enhance their professional skills. And carpenters have hammers, plumbers their wrenches, dentists their drills, doctors stethoscopes. Well, what do we lawyers have? Some could say gavels, but not really. What's special about lawyers is we really are knowledge workers. We work with information, we work with judgment, and help our clients resolve legal issues through our knowledge of the law and our knowledge of our process and the ability to apply the one to the other. So the advent of the personal computer into the business world has really made a big difference to our profession in a way that many other tools did not. And so the arrival of software on computers is really what we need in order to fill our toolbox as lawyers. And so it won't come as a very big surprise to any of you that there's a very wide variety of different kinds of legal software available for lawyers to use. First and foremost, there's practice management, document management, knowledge management, which is around organizing all of the previous legal research and work you've done. Business development work to bring in new clients, sometimes called CRM outside of law. Document assembly for drafting documents. Litigation support for tracking all of the depositions and documentary discovery in a piece of litigation. E-discovery, oh my goodness, what a huge field that is in terms of tracking electronic documents for the purposes of litigation. Court docketing, legal research, document comparison, and then there's a host of other tools. I've got the example here of metadata strippers, but there's dozens and dozens of smaller specific legal tools, all pieces of software that can help us work with our knowledge and fit in our lawyer's toolbox. Far too much to cover today. So what I want to do is highlight just a few specific areas of legal tools that should go in your toolbox. And I want to start with one that not so much should not be in your toolbox, but that should not be the place of primary reliance, and that is Outlook. Outlook is a great tool. It's a simple calendar, simple contact system, and of course it's indispensable for email. What scares me is the fact that according to the American Bar Association's 2013 Technology Survey, over half of the lawyers surveyed said that they depend on Outlook for organizing their law practice. And that just isn't right. Outlook was not designed for lawyers. First and foremost, it has no concept of client matter files. So you can't organize yourself within Outlook the way you organize your law practice. It also has no concept of billable time. And since most of us bill for our time by the hour or the 10th of the hour, that's a huge deficiency. It's got good calendaring, but it's simple. It doesn't have all of the advanced legal calendaring needs that we as professionals have. No business development, no CRM, no documents, no document drafting. Workflow in Outlook is non-existent, and of course it can't integrate with your billing or accounting system. In short, Outlook is not legal specific. It was not designed for lawyers. So while it's a tool you're going to have almost certainly for managing your email, it should not be one of the principal tools in your practice toolbox. So As I said, I don't want to try and go through all of the little tiny tools and the bigger tools that could be in that toolbox. I want to just approach this by the problems we face. And 5 typical problems that we thought we'd address today, and what tools are available to help you resolve them. Quick access to client information, coping with the flood of email, efficient document drafting, avoiding malpractice claims, and capturing billable time. Let's start with the access to matter information. I mean, matter information can vary so much depending on the area in which you practice, but the odds are if it's in paper, by the time any given matter gets going, that paper file starts to bulge. And then the challenge always seems to be that the paper file, the separate folder that goes in it, isn't there when you get the big red well file out, or when the phone rings, you've got somebody's file spread all over your desk, and it's not the file of the client who's calling you. You're working on a big cross-examination for tomorrow's trial, and a client on a matter that isn't going to come up for 6 months calls and asks you how it's going. Being able to respond quickly and intelligently to that client is going to impress them with the quality of your service. It's going to help you both get paid by that client eventually and get referred by that client to other clients. All in all, it's great for your business, but it wasn't what you were thinking of when the client called. And that ability to go find that information and have it at your fingertips when and as you need it is a huge issue in the practice of law, especially given how the volume of information has exploded and how the pace and expectations of speed have gone up so much. You want to be able to focus on solving the legal problem, not look for the pieces. So even though you have a computer, sometimes you may feel that your law practice looks a bit like this poor lawyer here. All right, how can it be? Well, I want to show you a very simple example of what it might be. I'm looking here at Amicus Attorney, the Premium Edition, which is, yes, a practice management system. And I'm going to be showing you both a desktop version and a cloud version. This here is the desktop version. It sits on a server in your office and goes on your computer. And as you can see at the moment, I happen to be looking at my calendar for today. I've got a variety of things on this morning. I had a pre-trial this morning, staff meeting later today, and right now I'm in my webinar. And over here on the right, here's my list of tasks that I have to do today. Just very quickly, when we were saying that Outlook doesn't understand client matter information and organization, remember how, well, in Outlook, you can have a list of tasks. Fine, but look at this list of tasks in Amicus. It's not only telling me what I've got to do, prepare that cross-examination for tomorrow, it's telling me on what client matter file it is and when it's due. So deadline management, really important things for lawyers, is easily and visibly handled. Here's one that's due in a week's time, and it's telling me that I have 7 days left. So from a practical legal orientation point of view, very much more helpful for a lawyer than a simple Outlook task list. But we're talking about information at your fingertips. So let's say, for example, here you can see I've got a task to call Janet Bailey. Well, again, as a legal specific calendar, it knows that's on the Bailey v. Kipling matter. Notice a hyperlink. I could go right to it. And Amicus not only organizes what I have to do, it helps me do it. So I can, in any task on my to-do list, just click that Do button, and you'll see what happened on the screen pretty instantly. In the background on my to-do list, you can see that Call Janet Bailey was marked Done, because I've done it. And over here, what it's done for me is it's made a note for me of the phone call, who I called, the matter I'm calling on, the phone number I called, and it's already got a timer running. It knows the time I started the call and, of course, the date. I can keep my notes right here about the call. So an attendance note on a phone call is really important for other purposes like malpractice claims, and we're going to come back to that in a few minutes. Right now, however, we're talking about information at your fingertips. Let's say while I'm talking to Janet, she says, well, Ron, that's not what you said to me last week, or your colleague said something different to me yesterday, and I want to know what's going on this matter. Well, of course, remember, our hypothesis here is that this isn't a file I was working on at the time the phone rang. I was working on that cross-examination on Burwood and Wright for tomorrow, and I'm kind of not prepared to talk to Janet about what happened yesterday. Not a problem, because Amicus anticipates your need, and you see this button right here, it has a call history button. So I can just click that, and that with that one click see all my previous calls with Janet Bailey. And I can open any of these up to see the details about them. Or I can say, show me all my calls on this file, or all calls that anyone at my firm has had. So there's a call with Jack McCoy as well as with Janet Bailey. So as quickly as that, I can have at my fingertips all the information about previous calls with Janet. But wait, maybe I need to know more. Maybe I need some specific facts about this file. No problem. I can just click the name of the file, and here Amicus Attorney has opened for me a full client matter file. This is the Bailey Reed Kipling matter that I'm acting for her on, and as you can see, I'm representing a fellow lawyer and her issues with her publisher. Within this, I have all the different kinds of information, so I can see all the time I've spent on the file, all the events that have ever happened on the file, everything I've done or everything anyone in my firm has done with our initials, all our communications, all the documents on the matter. They're all here, so while I'm still on the phone with Janet Bailey, I can see all that information, then close the file and finish the phone call just like that. That's information at my fingertips. And it's a little bit happier than this fellow. So that's one tool you want to have in your toolbox. All right, next, let's talk about the email flood. These days, we get so many emails. It's almost a principal means of communication. Referring again to that American Bar Association's technology survey, phone calls beat out emails by something like 2% in terms of the principal method of communicating with our clients these days, and emails beat out phone calls for communicating with everybody but our clients. So we get so many, dozens and dozens of calls a day. In fact, according to the Radicati survey last year, we average about 100 per day, sending about 36, receiving about 78. I don't know how that compares for you, but surveys can be misleading. To me, it feels about right, 100 emails a day. What I do know is staying on top of them is a real challenge. Just being organized, making sure you pay attention to the ones you have to pay attention to, deal with them, don't forget them, is a big challenge, especially given my responsibilities as a professional. And then once I've dealt with them, I have to save them because keeping a record of all my client communications is so important. Well, again, back to that ABA Tech survey, according to the ABA, 65% of lawyers, how they organize their emails is they just drag them to folders. And, you know, for each new client matter, you open a little folder in Outlook and you try and remember to drag them out of your inbox into that folder. Of course, you drag them out of your inbox because you're staring at your inbox. You rarely look at your sent items folder. So the percentage of lawyers who actually remember to drag them out of their sent items is very much lower. And that's not good because the emails you send are just as important as the emails you receive. There's more problems with that. Those little folders you create in Outlook, nobody can see them but you. So if you've got a colleague, a junior, or a partner down the hall, they can't see your little folders. So either they don't see those emails, or you have to remember to CC or BCC them, and now the email trail gets all cluttered with all sorts of CC, BCCs, and everything else. And then when you need them, something comes up and you need to see them, the odds of them being in the same right place at the right time are very, very low. So that's kind of why I refer to it as the email flood, and sometimes to me it feels like my mailbox looks just a bit like this. All right, what tool are we going to look at to manage that? Well, here I'm looking at Amicus Attorney again. This is the cloud version. I'm going to switch back and forth between desktop and cloud because both are viable choices in terms of organizing your practice depending on how you want to work. So you can see in Amicus Attorney's cloud version, it greets me in the morning or whenever I log in with a little bit of a summary about what's going on, how many more appointments I've got, how many phone calls I've got to return. I've got tasks, one deadline, and 8 other tasks on today's list. And you have 19 unread emails. That's par for the course. But notice when I put my mouse over it, it instantly says, well, help me with this. Show me my emails. And it'll do that with any of the things you see here. When your mouse goes over it, it helps you do it. So I can just click on Show Me My Emails, and there's my email inbox. Now, this is really magical because this is my full email inbox. I don't have to give up my Outlook, but everything that appears in my Outlook will appear exactly here, and vice versa. Everything I do here will appear exactly in my Outlook. The benefits are, though, that this is designed for me as a practicing lawyer. So here in my list of items in my inbox, I can see I've got an email from Janet Bailey. I haven't read it yet. It's subject to settlement talks. But look at this. It knows that it's on the Bailey Reed Kipling matter. It shows me when I received it. And it's got another magic column, whether or not I've done a time entry for it. So we're talking about coping with the email flood. We also should be talking about billing time. Well, that's one of our subjects for a few minutes from now. But notice another thing. For instance, here, the Ronald Black email about the Burwood and Wright matter, I've already read it. Maybe I read it by seeing a little preview of it just like that in the list, or maybe I read it by double-clicking on it and seeing all the detail. And you'll notice that when I do double-click on it, I've got all the email. If it had graphics or any other such things, they're all here. It's a full email client. I can reply to it, send new emails, reply all, forward it to someone else, flag it, set priorities. Everything that I could do in Outlook, I can do here. I can even save it as a PDF if I want a documentary copy of this. Right? So that's great. And of course, it's on the Burwood and Wright matter. Let's just open it up again to remind you of that. There's that Burwood and Wright matter association, and that's something I didn't get in Outlook. But there's something else. Notice the one above, the Janet Bailey one, I haven't even read it yet. It's bold. Or the one below, the Ronald Black one. I haven't read it either. It's bold. But Amicus already knows what file those emails are on. So what Amicus Attorney can do for me is it will organize as emails come in or as I send emails, whether I send them in Amicus or whether I send them from my smartphone, whether I send them from my Outlook, however I send them or receive them, Amicus is always watching my email and it will store them on the client matter file without me having to do anything. This is way better than dragging to folders. So you'll notice I clicked the hyperlink and opened the Bailey Reed Kipling file. Here it is, same file, but we're now in the cloud product. And you can see, again, I've organized all sorts of information about it. For instance, here's all the documents on the Bailey Reed Kipling matter, and I can get them on my iPad wherever I might be. But here's what we're talking about, the email. So here's all the emails that I've sent or received or that others in my firm have sent or received on the Bailey Reed Kipling matter. So no CCs or BCs required. If my partner on his cell phone at lunch today had sent an email on this matter, I would see it right here, right now, without him even coming back to the office. Notice there's that one about the settlement talks. Still bold. I still haven't read it, but it's already on the file and organized for me. That's what I mean about really coping with the email flood. It makes it so much easier both to track your emails, be on top of your emails, and very importantly, make sure you've done your time entries for your email, because for any email that I haven't done a time entry, here's one on the Gallagher will, all I have to do is click do a time entry and it will. All right, let's keep moving for our 5 tools in our toolbox. The next one I want to talk about is efficient document drafting. We all know how important documents are in a law practice. They're one of the primary outputs. You know, the outcome of so many legal consultations is a document, whether it's a pleading, a judgment, whether it's a contract, whether it's a mortgage or a deed. Documents often reflect the final outcome of the legal work we do. They're also so important to the process of how we accomplish that work along the way. We all know that reinventing the wheel and drafting those documents is incredibly inefficient, costs us money, it's hard to charge for it. And so most of us for years have been keeping precedence of the standard documents we use in our practice. It's sort of like a form of intellectual capital. We can build on our own precedents each time we need a similar document going into the future. If you can automate those documents, it gets so much better. This is often known as document assembly. Document assembly as a piece of software has been around for years, but doing one document at a time and having to fill in all the blanks or answer a series of questions before you're ready to do it is a bit laborious. What really unlocks the magical power in document assembly is the workflow. If you can just have it automated so that it takes all the information about a particular client matter out of your file and puts it into the document, you can have a first draft with a click so that drafting your documents begins to look a bit like this. All right, so let me give you a simple example. We'll go back to Amicus Attorney, and here's that calendar we've been looking at. You can see I've got some other tasks on my list today. I've still got to work on that cross-examination, but I also need to draft a retainer in the Jameson matter. There again is that do button. All I need to do is click the do button, and a couple of things happen for me. Once again, the task gets marked done. A timer appears on the top of the screen. 5 seconds in, it's got a document finished, and it's offering to save the document to my Amicus folder. I'll just cancel out of that for a second, and you can see here is a full letter to my client with all sorts of client-specific information about the file, the retainer, and other such things ready to go. And there is the enclosed retainer itself, appropriate signature lines and everything else for a corporate retainer. What happened there? I got two documents, a cover letter and a retainer in 5 seconds. So what that's really telling you is I've also actually got a time entry. There's the full time entry for that matter with the timer still running. I think we can stop it at just under a minute. And I did all of that with one click. That's, no, I don't want to save it for now, but that's practice automation. That's with one click, taking what I had to do and turning it into a finished work product. That's as efficient as you can get. A great tool for your toolbox. Retainer obviously is a very simple document. The more you work with it, the more documents you can do. All right, the next thing I want to cover very quickly is avoiding malpractice. We all know that in our practices, while we want to be great lawyers, lurking in the background is the issue of professional responsibility and making sure that we're not in any way negligent in how we practice law. These are the top 5 causes of malpractice claims. Communication errors, failing to follow instructions or to inform the client or to explain to clients. And you'll notice I put in brackets not documenting each of those because, you know, yes, sometimes lawyers are just negligent and they don't follow instructions, but far more often they believe they're following instructions, but the client disagrees, especially if the outcome isn't what the client expected. Suddenly it's the lawyer's fault. We've all heard of those situations. Well, what happens is if the client sues you for negligence and you're defending yourself, if the client says, I said A, and you said, no, you said B, the court will always prefer the client's version, unless you have something contemporaneously documenting your version of the story. In other words, the important aspect of avoiding malpractice and the #1 cause of malpractice claims is documenting it. Remember how we saw that attendance note that Amicus automatically created for us when we made a phone call? That's what I'm talking about. Always remembering to make notes or to save emails in the client matter file so that in the places where you confirmed your instructions or informed your client or gave your explanation to your client, there is a contemporaneous record of it. Deadline and time management. Failure to know, ascertain a deadline, failure to calendar a deadline. These are so simple, and yet they're the #2 cause of practice management or of malpractice claims. Numbers 3 and 4, you know, it's tough to have one single tool in your toolbox for dealing with these. Number 5, conflicts of interest, is very, very simple. So what we need is some safety gear, some tools in our toolbox that will help us avoid malpractice. Great. Let's go back, say, to the cloud version, and we've seen some phone calls on the desktop. The same thing's available here. When you make a call, just click to get a phone call, make a note of it, and keep track of it. Failing to know deadlines, let's have a look at that one. I'm just baffled by how that can be such a big deal, because in Amicus, there's something called a date calculator. And yes, I know that in the practice of law, there's some very unusual dates that have to be calculated. All you have to do is click on this and say, what is it you're trying to find out? Is it, 12 business days, calendar days, weeks, whatever, before or after or between a given date? What happens if it falls on a holiday, and where do you live in terms of the national holidays? And just calculate it for me. It's that simple. No matter what your rule, no matter what your deadline calculation can be, it is one click away from knowing when it is. And if you don't know what 12/09/2013 is, you just say, show me the day, and there it is in your calendar. And you can just put in an event here that says deadline for whatever it may be, and there, that entire area of malpractice can never happen to you. Now, can never happen to you. There was one aspect of it, which was to say failure to pay attention to deadlines. So let's have a look at our tasks list. Here you can see every task optionally has a due date. So when a deadline comes up, notice how the top task there has been turned red and it says its priority is high. So while we can't make you actually do something, we can certainly give a lot of emphasis to reminding you to do something. Remember again, for example, when we first log into Amicus Attorney, it gives us these very helpful reminders and overview of our practice. Notice the one over here at the right, you have a deadline today. So as soon as you log into Amicus Attorney, your friend is going to warn you of those deadlines, and those malpractice issues can disappear. Another issue for malpractice is files simply falling between the cracks, not being worked on for months and months till the lawyer forgets that they even have anything going on, and then something goes wrong. Well, Amicus Attorney won't let that happen because it's going to measure whether you're working on your files, and if any files haven't been worked on within a time interval you specify, then it's going to put a task on your to-do list reminding you to have a look at the file. The fifth malpractice one was conflict checks. Well, most lawyers do know that they have to do conflict checks. Remember to do them most of the time, but sometimes the case is just so interesting they don't. Or if they do, they run the conflict check against their accounting system to see if they've previously had a client of that name. Well, that's great. If you previously had that person as a client, you're now going to sue them. Yeah, you have a problem, or you probably have a problem, but just having someone as a client isn't the only method by which a conflict of interest can arise. So that's why Amicus Attorney has a conflict checking tool. And again, it's incredibly simple because all you have to do is bring up this button and enter the name you want to check for a conflict. And notice the text right here. It's going to be searching across everything in your practice. Email, documents, that means the full text of any document, contact, appointment, task. If it was mentioned in the body of a phone call, a time entry, an expense, a note in your client files. And it also gets searched across all contacts, not just clients, but all contacts for all firm members, even those who are never associated to a client file. And you've got an option of checking this box down here, also search all other firm email and appointments that are not searched with client files. So if somebody 6 months ago had an email from a prospective client, it didn't work out, and they never opened a file about it, but you now get approached by the other side on that dispute, do you have a conflict of interest? Well, maybe. How are you going to know that that email was received by your partner? Well, it's tough unless you have a tool in your toolbox like Amicus Attorney that with one click will do that for you. All right, got one more tool in the toolbox to talk about, and that's capturing billable time. Look, you know, it's how, for the most part, we get paid. But we all know it's really annoying to do it. And I don't know about you, but in a typical day, I work about 10 hours. And if I'm lucky, I manage to bill for 6. And that's just not the way you want it to be. There's a whole lot of reasons that billable time gets lost. And sometimes it gets exaggerated because you know you worked more and something else takes an unfair burden for that time you know was lost somewhere. And one of the principal culprits in missing time these days is email and phone calls. When you're doing email on your cell phone or phone calls on your cell phone or just sitting at your desk but Outlook is binging at you so fast that you can't cope with it, there's a lot of stuff can slip through the cracks. So you need a great tool in your toolbox for that. Let's have a look at how Amicus can help. Let's say I've finally finished preparing that cross-examination for tomorrow. So I'll mark that task done. Once again, you'll notice the red helpfulness about the deadline. I mark it done. notice what happened. As soon as I mark it done, it does a time entry for me. How long did I spend on that? I spent about an hour and a half. And boom, I don't have to click or think about anything else. It does a time entry as soon as I've marked it done. Or I can see things like a daily report, which when I first come in the morning tells me things about what's going on in my practice. For instance, I didn't do any time entries for a date in the past, or I had one or more phone calls for which I didn't do a time entry, one or more emails. So I could just click on that, and here's a list of all my emails, recent emails, for which I haven't done a time entry. In fact, anywhere in Amicus where you see that little blue icon, it means you haven't done a time entry. One click, I've done it. One click, I've done it. Can you do time entries on your emails that fast and easy? That's the kind of thing that's so powerful. Or I'm going to switch to the cloud for a second, and let's go back to this, again, very helpful screen that greets you when you come in the morning. One of the reminders is you have 12 recent activities without time entries. Wow. And when I put my mouse over it, it says, help me do these time entries. I click, and instantly I get what's called the Time Entry Assistant. It's in both our cloud and our desktop premium product. And what it's done is it's gone through all my activities for the past 3 days. I can pick my range for which there's no time entry. So I had a phone call. I did a bunch of emails, another phone call. And again, for any one of these, I can just select it and say, please do a time entry on that. There's a time entry. Great, thank you very much. It comes off the list. And that helps me capture my time really, really fast. But wait, I did mention working on your cell phone. So while we're measuring our time with that measuring tape in our toolbox, we need a special tool to go on our cell phone. And of course, there is one. We call it Amicus Time Tracker. It will do your time entries on your smartphone. And it's so fast because it's real-time, secure connection between your smartphone and either your desktop or your cloud Amicus Attorney. Here's how it looks. I've used an iPhone here. It also works on Android and Blackberries. It's just a simple timesheet. You select an item or click the plus to add a new one. You fill in the file. Again, it's a selection list. The date defaults to today. If you want to change the length of time, thumb scrolling wheels, bang, you've got your time entry. So, when we're talking about tools for our toolbox, I think the most important tool to have in that toolbox is a practice management solution. By no means has this been a full demonstration of what practice management can do for you, but it's an example. When over 50% of lawyers out there are using Outlook to manage and organize their practices, I think that everything I've just shown you could not have been done by Outlook. And we've seen quick access to client information, how it controls the flood of email, the document drafting so fast, 5 seconds to draft those 2 documents. Lots of ways to avoid malpractice claim. And last but not least, of course, capturing more billable time so that in a few weeks, if not a few days, practice management easily pays for itself. In short, you've got all of that in your toolbox. Or if you want to put it this way, you've got a great tool belt as you go out to practice law.